It might be considered old news now with the situation of ASAP Rocky on stage cursing out the audience if they had anything bad to say about him. The things he was saying that his children are going to hear if they weren't there. But eventually, because of the internet, the profanities that he shared will get to their ears, as well as Rihanna. So I'm not here to talk about exactly just what happened, because you know that when I speak about a topic, I like to extract something beneficial out of it instead of being, like many others, just a gossip, blog, platform, video service. No, we're going to go a little deeper than that. And this piece is titled, When a Man Feels He Has to Compete with the Woman He Loves, What the ASAP Rocky Controversy Really Reveals. The concert was never the real story, if you ask me. Oh, I'm so rude. Welcome, everybody. LanceScurvX here of LanceScurvX.com, the Scurv podcast. We're going to take a deep dive and we're going to go places with this one. Every now and then, a celebrity moment becomes much bigger than the celebrity involved. It stops being about music, fashion, fame, or entertainment, and starts shining a light on something that millions of ordinary people wrestle with every single day. That is why the recent public conversation surrounding ASAP Rocky and Rihanna deserves more than just a few social media jokes or emotional reactions. Beneath the headlines is a much deeper discussion about relationships, emotional maturity, public respect, and what happens when one partner becomes one of the biggest stars on the planet while the other is still trying to establish his own place in the spotlight. The internet erupted after widely circulated reports of comments ASAP Rocky made during a concert, followed by his public response to the criticism. Some listeners viewed the remarks as harmless stage banter, while others believed they crossed a line for a man who is in a committed relationship and shares children with Rihanna. Whether someone sees those comments as offensive, immature, or simply entertainment, one thing cannot be denied. They open the door to a conversation that reaches far beyond celebrity culture. They force many people to ask what respect should look like inside a relationship, especially when millions of people are watching. What makes this story so compelling is not simply what was said on stage. Entertainers have said shocking things for decades. Provocative lyrics, controversial jokes, and outrageous performances are nothing new. The deeper issue is perception. Public behavior sends messages, whether fair or unfair. People often judge a person's values by the way they carry themselves when the spotlight is brightest. Words spoken into a microphone do not disappear when the concert ends. They become part of a public record that spouses, children, family members, friends, and future generations may eventually hear. There's another layer to this story that deserves careful thought. So many layers to this story. Rihanna is no ordinary celebrity. She's one of the most recognizable women in the world. A global businesswoman, an artist, and now a mother. In recent years, much of the public has watched her embrace motherhood while continuing to support A$AP Rocky's career. That public image has led many people to view their relationship as one built on mutual encouragement. Because of that image, any public remark that appears to undermine that sense of partnership naturally attracts attention and invites discussion. Before anyone rushes to conclusions, it's important to remember that none of us truly knows what happens inside another person's relationship. We do not know the private conversations, the private understandings, or the private boundaries between A$AP Rocky and Rihanna. What we do know is what has been presented publicly. Those public moments are enough to start a meaningful conversation about something much larger than two celebrities. They invite us to examine how ego, success, and emotional security can shape the way people treat the person standing beside them. For generations, many societies taught men that their value was measured by their ability to earn the most money, receive the most recognition, and occupy the highest position inside the relationship. Whether we agree with those old ideas or not, they have shaped countless men. Many were raised believing that being the man of the house meant always being the provider, the leader, and the one receiving the greatest admiration. When life unfolds differently, some men adapt with grace. Others struggle in silence. That struggle becomes even more visible when the woman is not just slightly more successful, but vastly more accomplished. There's a tremendous difference between a couple where one spouse earns $10,000 more each year and a couple where one partner is an internationally recognized icon whose influence stretches across music, fashion, beauty, or business. Those are two completely different realities. They place enormous pressure on anyone whose identity has become tied to being seen as the biggest star in the relationship. This is where the conversation surrounding A$AP Rocky and Rihanna becomes interesting from a human perspective. Regardless of what is happening behind closed doors, many people have asked whether some of his public behavior gives the appearance of a man trying to establish his own dominance rather than simply enjoying the success of the woman beside him. That appearance may or may not reflect reality, but the question itself resonates because it mirrors challenges that ordinary couples face every single day, far away from cameras and concert stages. A secure man does not become smaller because the woman he loves becomes greater. Her success does not erase his identity. It does not diminish his accomplishments. It does not take away from his manhood. A confident husband or partner understands that love is not a competition with one winner. When one person rises, the entire household can rise together. Her victories become shared victories because healthy relationships are built on partnership rather than rivalry. Unfortunately, not everyone reaches that level of emotional maturity. Sometimes success becomes a mirror that reflects hidden insecurities that had been buried for years. A man who once felt completely confident may suddenly begin measuring himself against the attention his partner receives. He may start seeking validation in unhealthy ways, not because his partner has done anything wrong, but because his own identity has become tangled up in comparison. That's not unique to celebrities. It happens in neighborhoods, workplaces, churches, schools, and homes across the world every single day. One of the strongest men I have ever known is not necessarily the loudest man in the room. He is not one demanding attention or constantly reminding everyone of his accomplishments. Real confidence has a quiet strength to it. It does not need to announce itself because it is secure enough to exist without applause. There's a world of difference between supporting your partner and secretly competing with your partner. One attitude builds trust, while the other slowly tears it apart. A relationship should never feel like two people standing on opposite sides of a boxing ring. It should feel like two people standing shoulder to shoulder against the challenges that life inevitably brings. When the public watched Rihanna embrace motherhood, many people admired what appeared to be a woman who was willing to support her family while continuing to build an extraordinary career. That image inspired many women because it suggested that love and success could exist together. It suggested that two accomplished people could lift each other higher instead of constantly fighting over who deserved the spotlight. That's why the recent controversy struck such a nerve with so many people. Whether one agrees with the criticism or not, the discussion revealed something much deeper than celebrity gossip. It exposed how many women long for a partner who celebrates their success instead of feeling threatened by it. It also revealed how many men still struggle with defining their worth outside of public recognition, income, or success. Perhaps the greatest lesson from this entire controversy has very little to do with fame at all. It's a reminder that before we choose someone to build life with, before we bring children into the world together, before we pledge our futures to another human being, we should pay close attention to character. Careers can rise and fall. Beauty changes. Money comes and goes. Fame is temporary for the most part, but emotional maturity, humility, self-control, and genuine respect are qualities that become more valuable with every passing year. Those are the foundations upon which lasting families are built, and no amount of celebrity can replace them. One of the greatest tests of a person's character is not how they behave when they're the ones receiving all of the applause. It's how they behave when the person standing beside them is the one the world cannot stop celebrating. That is where confidence is either confirmed or exposed as something that was never really there in the first place. The recent public conversation surrounding A$AP Rocky and Rihanna has brought this question into the spotlight. Not because anyone outside of their family knows what happens behind closed doors, but because public behavior often sparks private reflection. Millions of people looked at what unfolded and began asking themselves a much larger question. How many men can genuinely celebrate a woman whose success, wealth, influence, and recognition far exceed their own? That question reaches into neighborhoods just as much as it reaches into Hollywood. Every day there are women who own successful businesses while their husbands work ordinary jobs. There are wives who earn six figures while their husbands bring home considerably less. There are women who become doctors, attorneys, executives, entrepreneurs, and public figures while their partners quietly support them from the background. Some of these relationships become stronger because both people understand that love is not measured by who earns the biggest paycheck. Others slowly begin to fracture because one person's identity was never built on character. It was built on comparison. For generations, boys have often been raised to believe that their value comes from being the provider, the protector, and the person everyone admires. While there's nothing wrong with providing for one's family or taking pride in honest work, trouble begins when a man's entire sense of worth depends upon always being seen as number one. If he believes that his importance disappears the moment his wife becomes more successful than he is, then every one of her accomplishments can begin to feel like one of his defeats. That is not because she has done anything wrong. It's because he has tied his identity to a scorecard that healthy relationships were never meant to have. A secure relationship has no scoreboard. It has no first place or second place. It has no winner and no loser. It is two people moving in the same direction. When one succeeds, the other celebrates because they understand that they are building the same life together. That kind of emotional maturity is rare because it requires humility. It requires laying aside pride. Most importantly, it requires knowing exactly who you are before you even enter the relationship. There's an important distinction that too many people overlook. Ego and self-respect are not the same thing. A man with self-respect does not need constant validation from strangers. He does not need to prove his masculinity every time he walks into a room. He doesn't feel threatened because someone else receives more attention than he does. His confidence comes from his values, his integrity, his work ethic, and the promises he keeps. Ego operates very differently. Ego is constantly hungry. It must always be fed. It compares, it competes, it keeps looking over its shoulder to see who is getting more applause. Ego cannot simply enjoy another person's success because it immediately begins asking, "What about me?" It's never satisfied because it's built upon outside approval instead of inner stability. Big difference. This is why public moments matter. They shape how people perceive us. When an entertainer says something that many people view as disrespectful toward a committed relationship and then publicly dismisses the criticism with more inflammatory language, observers naturally begin asking whether they are seeing confidence or insecurity. Those observers may be right, or they may be wrong. None of us can read another person's heart, but perception matters because our public conduct creates impressions whether we intend to or not. That is one reason people reacted so strongly to the reports involving A$AP Rocky. The discussion was not simply about one concert or one statement. Many people interpreted the exchange as conflicting with the image of commitment and mutual support that they believed he and Rihanna had projected over the years. Whether that interpretation is fair or unfair, it demonstrates how quickly trust can be questioned when public actions appear inconsistent with public values. One aspect of this story deserves much more attention than it has received. Over the past several years, many people have watched Rihanna embrace motherhood while continuing to manage an extraordinary business empire. They have also watched her publicly support A$AP Rocky's career by attending events, celebrating his accomplishments, and standing beside him during important moments. That public support became part of the image people associated with their relationship. Motherhood changes a woman's life in ways that many people never really fully appreciate. The physical changes are obvious, but the emotional changes run even deeper. Priorities shift. Time becomes more precious. Sleep becomes a luxury. A woman who once had the freedom to focus almost entirely on her own ambitions suddenly begins pouring enormous amounts of herself into raising children. Many mothers willingly make those sacrifices because their greatest joy becomes watching their children grow. That tradition deserves protection. It deserves appreciation. It deserves gratitude. Whether the family is famous or completely unknown, when a woman embraces motherhood, the father has an opportunity to become one of her greatest sources of strength. His words can make her feel secure. His actions can reassure her that she is cherished. His loyalty can become a safe place during one of the most demanding seasons of her life. That's why this discussion resonates with so many women. It's not simply about celebrity headlines. It touches something deeply personal. Many women know what it feels like to support a man's dreams while quietly carrying enormous responsibilities of their own. They understand what it means to sacrifice recognition so that the family can flourish. They also understand the pain that comes when those sacrifices are met with public embarrassment instead of public honor. One lesson rises above every headline connected to this controversy. Before choosing someone to build a family with, look beyond chemistry. Look beyond attraction. Look beyond financial success, social status, physical appearance, or popularity. Those things may open the door to a relationship, but they are not what sustains it. Watch how a person handles success. Watch how they handle disappointment. Watch how they speak about people when cameras are rolling and when they believe no one important is listening. Pay attention to whether they constantly seek validation from strangers or whether they find satisfaction in living with integrity. Character always leaves fingerprints. Sometimes they're obvious, sometimes they're subtle, but given enough time, they always become visible. The hardest truth is that children eventually grow up. They become old enough to watch old interviews, old concerts, old social media clips, and old headlines. One day they begin asking questions about who their parents were before they understood the meaning of those moments. Fame cannot erase that reality. Money cannot erase it. Public relations campaigns cannot erase it. Every parent, regardless of wealth or celebrity, is writing a legacy that their children may one day read for themselves. And that is why adulthood requires something greater than talent. It requires wisdom. It requires restraint. It requires understanding that every decision we make echoes far beyond the moment in which it was made. The applause eventually fades. Headlines disappear. Trending topics are replaced by new ones. But the example we leave behind for our children can last for generations. That is a legacy worth protecting and is far more valuable than a few moments of attention under bright stage lights. One of the greatest illusions of adulthood is believing that children are too young to notice what is happening around them. Parents often assume that because a child cannot fully understand a conversation today, the moment will simply disappear into the past. You want to hear something? It rarely works that way. Children may not grasp every word when they are toddlers, but they absorb emotions, habits, attitudes, and patterns long before they understand definitions. As they grow older, those same children gain access to the internet, archived videos, interviews, headlines, and social media posts that preserve moments their parents may have long forgotten. Many of us don't think about that. But that reality makes this conversation much larger than A$AP Rocky and Rihanna. Like every public figure, they're raising children in an age where almost nothing disappears. Years from now, their sons will have the ability to watch concerts, interviews, and countless public appearances with a simple search. They will not need someone to tell them what happened. They will be able to see it for themselves. That is a reality every parent should consider, whether they live in a mansion or in a one-bedroom apartment. The question every mother and father should ask is not, can I get away with this? The better question is, if my child watches this 10 years from now, what lesson will they take away? That question has the power to reshape decisions before they're ever made. It reminds us that our children are not simply listening to our advice. They are studying our example. There's an old saying that values are more often caught than taught. A parent can spend hours giving speeches about honesty, loyalty, respect, humility, and self-control. But if those same qualities are missing from everyday conduct, children quickly learn that words and actions are telling two different stories. They become experts at spotting inconsistency. In many ways, they are better observers than adults because they have not yet learned to excuse behavior that contradicts what people claim to believe. There's another illusion that modern culture constantly sells us. It suggests that wealth, fame, luxury, and influence somehow make people better parents. Nothing could be further from the truth. A private jet cannot replace emotional availability. Designer clothing cannot substitute for integrity. Millions of dollars cannot purchase wisdom. Celebrity status cannot teach a child how to become a decent human being. Some of the finest fathers in the world have never appeared on television. Some of the finest mothers have never walked the red carpet. They quietly raise children who learn the importance of kindness, accountability, discipline, and respect because those values were demonstrated every single day inside the home. They understood that children remember consistency far longer than they remember expensive gifts. Likewise, public recognition offers no protection against poor decisions. The spotlight simply magnifies whatever is already there. If a person is generous, the world notices. If a person is humble, people notice. If a person consistently behaves in ways that many view as immature or disrespectful, those moments receive attention as well. Fame does not create character. It amplifies it. This is why public conduct deserves thoughtful discussion. It's not about pretending that famous people are perfect or demanding that entertainers never make mistakes. They're human beings like everyone else. It's about recognizing that influence carries responsibility. When millions of people are watching, every action teaches something, whether that lesson is intentional or not. For far too long, many boys have grown up believing that manhood is measured by dominance, conquest, popularity, or the ability to command attention. Those ideas have been reinforced through music, movies, social media, and peer pressure until they begin to feel normal. Yet history teaches a very different lesson. The men who leave the greatest legacies are rarely remembered because they demanded attention. They're remembered because they earned respect. They earned it. Real manhood is revealed by self-control. It is revealed by the ability to think beyond the emotion of the moment. It is revealed by protecting rather than humiliating, encouraging rather than competing, building rather than tearing down. Strength without wisdom becomes recklessness. Confidence without humility becomes arrogance. Success without character eventually becomes emptiness. But why is it that so many of us just can't see that? That is one reason this conversation extends beyond celebrity culture. Somewhere, there's a teenage boy watching these public moments and deciding what kind of man he wants to become. Somewhere else, there's a young girl deciding what kind of treatment she should accept from the man she eventually chooses. Public figures may never meet those young people, yet their actions still became part of the cultural education that shapes how the next generation thinks about relationships. If young men conclude that maturity means constantly seeking validation from strangers, they will carry that belief into adulthood. If young women begin believing that public disrespect is something they must tolerate because that's just how men are, society loses something precious. Healthy relationships begin to disappear, one compromise at a time. One of the saddest realities in many relationships is that some women, spend years trying to earn respect they should have received freely from the very beginning. They become emotional caretakers, constantly reassuring insecure partners while quietly minimizing their own accomplishments just to keep the peace. Instead of celebrating success together, they begin shrinking themselves to avoid provoking resentment. And that's a sad thing. No healthy relationship should require one person to become smaller so the other one can feel bigger. A truly secure man does not need the woman beside him to dim her light. He understands that her success is not stealing his. Her intelligence does not reduce his. Her achievements do not erase his identity. In fact, a confident man often finds joy in watching the woman he loves accomplish things that inspire the world because he recognizes that love is not about competing for the spotlight. It's about protecting the person who shares it with you. That is one reason so many people have followed the public discussion involving A$AP Rocky and Rihanna with such intensity. Beyond the headlines, many have been asking themselves whether they are witnessing an example of partnership or an example of the tensions that can arise when fame, identity, and ego collide. None of us can know the full truth of another couple's private life, and we should resist pretending otherwise. Yet the questions raised by these public moments are worth asking because they encourage us to examine our own relationships with honesty instead of judgment. Perhaps that is the greatest value of this conversation. It reminds every one of us to look inward before looking outward. Instead of asking only whether a celebrity behaved wisely, we should ask ourselves whether we're becoming the kind of spouse, partner, mother, father, or friend whose presence makes the people we love feel safe, honored, and genuinely supported. That is a question no amount of fame can answer for us. Each of us must answer it through the way we choose to live every single day. Perhaps the greatest mistake people make when choosing a life partner is confusing chemistry with character. Chemistry is exciting. It makes your heart race. It fills conversations with laughter, passion, attraction, and dreams about the future. It creates butterflies and sleepless nights. There's nothing wrong with chemistry. It's one of the beautiful parts of falling in love. But chemistry is not a foundation. It's a spark. A spark can start a fire, but it cannot keep a home standing when the storms of life begin to blow. Character is what remains after the excitement settles down. It is what shows itself when money becomes tight, when careers change direction, when children arrive, when health declines, when disappointments pile up, and when nobody is applauding anymore. Character is what determines whether someone chooses loyalty over temptation, humility over pride, and respect over selfishness. That is why character should always carry more weight than chemistry. Too many people spend months getting to know someone's smile while never taking the time to study their values. They become experts on a person's favorite music, favorite foods, and favorite vacation spots, but they never stop to ask how that person handles criticism, disappointment, rejection, or success. Those are the questions that reveal the heart. Those are the questions that determine whether a relationship has the strength to survive real life. The public discussion surrounding A$AP Rocky and Rihanna reminds us that fame does not exempt anyone from these realities. Public attention can magnify strengths, but it can also magnify weakness. Whatever conclusions people reach about the recent controversy, it has encouraged millions to ask an important question that has nothing to do with celebrity. Are we choosing partners because they excite us, or because they possess the kind of character that can sustain a family through every season in life? I want to speak directly to the young men who might be listening to this. Do not measure your worth by whether you make more money than the woman you love. Do not measure your masculinity by whether strangers know your name before they know hers. Do not spend your life competing with the person who should be your greatest teammate. If God, life, hard work, or opportunity blesses your wife with extraordinary success, celebrate her without hesitation. Walk beside her proudly. Protect her peace. Defend her reputation. Speak highly of her, whether she's standing beside you or sitting on the other side of the world. Never believe that lifting her higher somehow lowers you. The strongest men in history were secure enough to help others shine. Remember that your children are studying your definition of manhood every single day. Your sons are learning how to become men by watching you. Your daughters are learning what kind of treatment they should expect from the men they one day allow into their lives. That responsibility is far greater than any concert, any interview, any award, or any headline. Real masculinity is not loud, it's dependable. Real masculinity is not reckless, it's disciplined. Real masculinity is not constantly demanding attention, it's quietly earning respect. Those lessons never, and I mean never, go out of style. Now I want to speak directly to the women. Never apologize for your success. Never make yourself smaller so that someone else's ego can feel bigger. Never believe that your intelligence, your education, your ambition, or your accomplishments are flaws that must be hidden in order to keep a relationship alive. The right man will never resent the light that shines from the woman he truly loves. He will stand beside that light with gratitude because he understands that both of you are building something greater than yourselves. Pay attention to how a man reacts when you succeed. Does he celebrate you with genuine happiness, or does every achievement seem to create distance sarcasm, competition, or resentment. Those reactions are often revealing. People can pretend for a season, but character eventually introduces itself. Do not ignore warning signs because someone is handsome, famous, wealthy, charismatic, or exciting. Attraction has convinced countless intelligent people to overlook behavior that later became heartbreak. Believe what consistent actions reveal, not merely what beautiful words promise. You deserve a partner that applauds your victories even when no one else is watching. The strongest relationships are rarely the ones that dominate social media. They are the ones where respect quietly lives behind closed doors. They are the marriages where two people speak kindly to one another when there are no cameras recording the conversation. They are the homes where children grow up watching parents disagree without destroying each other's dignity. They are the relationships where success belongs to both people because neither person is trying to outshine the other. Ironically, these couples may never become famous. They may never trend online. Their photographs may never appear on magazine covers. Yet, they often possess something infinitely more valuable than public attention. They possess peace. Peace cannot be purchased. Peace cannot be manufactured by public relations. Peace grows where humility, trust, forgiveness, loyalty, and mutual respect are watered day after day over many years. That kind of relationship is worth more than every luxury the world has to offer. As I close this discussion, I find myself thinking less about celebrity and more about legacy. One day, every microphone will be turned off. Every sold-out arena will eventually become someone else's stage. Every trend on social media will disappear beneath the next headline. Every fortune will be inherited by someone else. Every public argument will eventually fade into history. But there is one thing that remains: the memory people carry of how we treated those who loved us the most. That is the true measure of life. The recent public conversation involving A$AP Rocky and Rihanna may eventually fade from the news cycle, just like thousands of celebrity stories before it. Yet the larger lesson will remain as relevant tomorrow as it is today. Every relationship eventually reaches moments where pride battles humility, when ego challenges gratitude, and when public attention competes with private responsibility. Those moments reveal who we really are. If this discussion encourages one young man to become a better husband, one father to think more carefully before speaking, one woman to choose character over excitement, or one couple to stop competing and start protecting one another, then this conversation has accomplished something far greater than entertainment. Because at the end of the day, the greatest achievement in life is not becoming famous, it's becoming trustworthy, it's becoming honorable, it's becoming the kind of person whose spouse feels cherished, whose children feel secure, whose legacy continues teaching long after your voice has gone silent. That is the kind of success no amount of money can buy. That is the kind of greatness the world desperately needs. That is the kind of greatness that never goes out of style. Thank you for being here, and I hope you've gotten something from these words. I spoke them from my soul. Leave a comment, let me know what you think about this topic. As I move on to the next one, you are appreciated, very much so, beyond all measure. But these conversations we have to have. The names in the headlines will change. Human nature won't. That's why these conversations matter. This is LanceScurvX of LanceScurvX.com. I truly appreciate you. Peace.